Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The saying, time heals all wounds, it doesn't really apply in boxing. It should actually be money heals all wounds. And that is what looks to be behind a potential return to Matchroom boxing in the United Kingdom for Luiz Ortiz. Ortiz's management is currently working on a deal with Eddie Hearn, according to the Cuban Southpaw's representative, Jay Jimenez, who told Boxing Scene, "Eddie and I are working on maybe doing a big money 3-fight deal for Luiz Ortiz, so it looks likely to happen soon. Eddie could make Luiz a big star in the UK." And those are very famous last words from Jimenez. You might actually recall Ortiz was on a fight-by-fight deal previously with Matchroom in 2016. He fought Dave Allen and Malik Scott, and they were two very forgettable fights. He left after becoming disgruntled that he couldn't get an Anthony Joshua fight, and later in 2017 he landed with Al Haymon in PBC, subsequently having a title fight with Deontay Wilder in early 2018 and then starching Razvan Kajanu more recently. I think it's fair to say though that Ortiz's stock, it's higher in general with boxing fans than it ever has been. And that's been evidenced recently in the situation between Ortiz and Dillian Whyte, with the Cuban getting a lot of support from the boxing community, boxing fans, for a potential matchup. And that's one that Eddie Hearn has admitted that hardcore fans do want to see. Not even just hardcore fans, there's been a lot of support for that fight more generally. But an Ortiz and Whyte fight, it isn't looking likely, and even Jimenez has admitted that. And Hearn is intent on making a Chisora fight for Whyte instead. But the situation, it would have shown Hearn that there is pent-up demand from fans to see Luiz Ortiz. More demand than there otherwise would have been 2 years ago. So, of course, that's why he will be interested in signing Ortiz and to capitalize on that. And don't be surprised if you actually end up seeing Ortiz, if he does sign with Hearn, don't be surprised if you see him in the United States on DAZN. Hearn is thirsty for some more top heavyweights on that platform. Right now, it's pretty thin. They've got Jarrell Miller and Nkosi Solomon. And Miller, he just beat the brakes off a faded Thomas Adamek in a fight nobody wanted to see. And Solomon lost his opening fight of his pro career. So there's definitely scope and space for Ortiz to fatten out the heavyweight roster if he was to fight on DAZN in the United States. But even if it was in the UK, plenty of fights to be had. But don't rule out that by bringing Ortiz into the tent, that he could end up having a big fight with either a Dillian Whyte or eventually Anthony Joshua. I'm not going to sort of put a timescale on that because who knows, it's pretty crowded for Joshua, and Whyte looks like he might be facing Joshua in April 2019. And for Hearn, if he does sign Ortiz, there's going to be very little value in again throwing him in with the Dave Allens of the world, because that's not going to do anything for Ortiz. And Hearn will need to have a pathway or a plan of sorts to actually entice Ortiz back into the fold. But part of it, especially for Ortiz, is locking up some of the money up front. And Jimenez, he's indicated from his statements that a big money 3-fight deal is in the works. Ortiz, he will want some of his financial security built in. He'll want to walk away no matter what happens, having been paid well. And after all, money is going to be one of Ortiz's prime motivations for signing with Matchroom, and also just going there. You know, he's forgiving what's happened in the past. Money is the great healer here. And Ortiz, we have to remember, he's at the back end of his career. 39, he's largely been avoided by most of the top fighters since he turned pro. He hasn't earned life-changing sums of money, and his biggest payday to date is the $500,000 he got for fighting Deontay Wilder. His career is largely in the rear view. He needs to be looking at maximizing his earnings while he's still in the sport while he can. And if swallowing his pride to again sign with Eddie Hearn is the play to achieve that, he will. I've recently had a few comments arguing Ortiz isn't motivated by money and that he's taken care of at PBC. But these comments neglect the fact that he's only had a couple of fights at PBC on that platform. He hasn't been earning millions of dollars. He hasn't earned millions of dollars in his career to the point where he is, so comfortable that he doesn't have to worry about money again in the future. His prime motivation, of course, it will be money. Make no mistake about that, especially if he can land some sort of guaranteed 7-figure contract, 3-fight deal, huge amount guaranteed up front. Of course, that's going to be attractive for Ortiz. And if the prospect of a bigger fights down the line for bigger purses, potentially a White or a Joshua fight, he's going to want to go for that. And Ortiz, he's shown until this point in his career, he keeps his options open. And he hasn't closed the door on PBC yet, with his manager also saying he may still end up on the undercard of Wilder Fury on December 1st. Hearn'S saying, at the end, I think Heyman and Luiz Jr. will give the best choice for Luis King Kong Ortiz, so I'll wait on them. So far they have been great and delivered the best fights. And we also shouldn't discount the possibility that Hearn'S' very public statements it's a negotiating tactic of sorts, designed to exert some pressure to try squeeze out a similar lucrative 3-fight deal at PBC. Ortiz, he is in a position where he is a commodity of sorts. They want to potentially make him, worth sort of a bit of a bidding war here. And he's more of a commodity than he previously was. So expect him to try drum up the interest, chase the money. But let's hope whatever happens, wherever he goes, if he stays put or if he goes to Matchroom, that he gets some good fights, because he doesn't have a huge amount of time left in his career. 39 right now, and he needs to, be in the big fights now, not later. It's kind of now or never, really. What do you make of it all? Potential 3-fight deal for Matchroom for Luis Ortiz, but who knows? Maybe he stays at PBC. Maybe he gets a decent offer from them as well. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.